against people, back to our AMAC practice paper. So again, using the Osborne ones, I'm flipping on this one though, straight onto the Tutor Zone 2. Not there's anything wrong with the Tutor Zone 1, it's just possibly too easy. Most of the marks are in a flex budget, and there's only a labour cost variance to calculate. So this way I'll do the materials and the labour cost. Also a tick box question about feed forward systems. Feed forwards means you learn from the past and work those into a forecast. Hence the clue is the word forecast there. Actual, historical with budgeted is actually variance analysis. So that one doesn't work. Right, let's get this through as quick as possible, because obviously you can pause and lots of calculations. Read carefully. This one's not too bad. It hasn't got a budgeted production to confuse you. We've only got the actual production 12,300, and it's got standard cost, everything laid out nice and easily. So first of all, we're going to work out our standard cost. So that will be our 12,300 units that we've actually made, and it's telling us it's 0.65 of a kilo at 14.75. And then that's the easy bit, and then also easy. So apart from the actual part with the formulas in, the variances, there are other marks from some routine numbers, some number mental gymnastics. So actual materials price, they paid 116,663 for 7872. We can see that's close to this, so I'm going to worry about getting it the wrong way around. It isn't exactly 14.82. Keep the long number in your calculators. If you were going to use it, I'd recommend for the variance not using that, because on another question you might get a rounding issue. And then the actual materials used is an actual exact number, so they use 7872 for 12,300. And that is exactly 0.64, so we wouldn't need to worry about using that one for the calculations if we were using a slightly different formulas to what I use. Alright, so the price variance. Okay, well first of all, we know this is adverse. Because it's £14.82 instead of £14.75. However, the usage, they've used 0.64. And then we also know the totals come in standard 117,000, nearly 118,000. It's 116,000 something. So we also know that's favourable. Useful to do that first. We haven't got to worry about minus figures for adverse, although we do that in part C, because it gives us an idea, so that if we made a mathematical error, it doesn't make sense. We've got an idea what we're looking at. In fact, that figure and that figure should add up to that one when we've adjusted the adverse and the favourable. So if I'd forgotten one of the formulas, I could work it out from the other two. In fact, there's a lot to be said for working this one out first. That's the calculation we've just done, and then the original, or the actual, gives us an idea of what we're aiming for, so reduces mathematical error. So price variance first, so they've bought 7872, so 7872 should cost £14.75 each. Should be 116,112. However, we know that it cost 116,663. So our price variance is the difference in the two. Minus. Get it the right way around, so it's a positive. We don't need to worry about the minus on this question, and that's the easier one. So we could actually work this middle figure out from the difference, or we could work it out properly, and of course we can reconcile and check, and then we can leave the question knowing we've got it correct. So a lot of students learn these formulas on post-it notes, practice them quite often along with ratios, looking at these numbers just before the exam. And if you were doing that, you might want to come straight into this question whilst they're fresh in your head. Plenty of practice papers, chance to try it. See what works for you. Usage variance. So this is the two-stage one. So first of all, we made 12,300 and we should have used 0.65 each. 78772 is given to us. So we know, I'm not going to waste time doing the formula, that was 123 kilograms. So the second stage is just timesing it by the standard price. So 1814. So 1814 minus 551 is 1263. So we've reconciled it, we're happy, and we can move on. So the cost variance will just be the 1263. Because they wanted you to do this, this is possibly why we've got the adverse and favourable in a separate column as a percentage of the standard cost. I've already formulated it or formatted it to percentage, so I haven't got to do times 100. And one decimal place, of course. And on to the labour hours. So very similar, except we now want adverse in minus, so we've just got to watch that one out just to save time. I've already worked out that the budgeted 16,000 should say 3,200 hours, that's 0.2 of an hour, and 38,800 works out at £12.15 an hour. That just saves a few seconds on a otherwise relatively basic question. So the standard cost, they actually made 15,200, so they made less than budget. However, just in case there was a rounding, there isn't, but on a different day. And that's our standard cost. We could also have worked this one out a different way. We could have worked out 15,200 over 16,000 times the 38,880. Comes to the same answer. Whichever way works for you. So the labour rate, a little bit like the price, we need to work out how much those 2,964 hours should have cost. So 2,964 times 12.15 should have been £36,012.60, and we know it costs 35,568. So if we do A23 minus H23, that would be our answer if I'd hit the minus symbol instead of the plus, because I've got to have the light off. In fact, I'm not sure why. Probably it's best to do it the other way around, because it's a favourable, so I would actually have got that one wrong. I've done it again. Got there. Third time lucky. Pretty obvious it was the wrong answer though. So hopefully if you did that in the exam you would spot. I don't think you've got that one right. And that one's a favourable because it should have cost 36,000, it cost less. And also we know that the number of hours taken, so the efficiency 2,964. So work out the hours first. It's the 0.2 that we've worked out times is 3,040 hours, and they've done it in 76 hours difference. So they've done it in the 2,964. Equals 76 hours we've got to remember, again, it's favourable, they've done it in less time, so highly motivated workers, despite the fact that they're getting £12 an hour instead of £12.15. Okay, so we need 76 times the standard cost, the budget. So 923.40. Add those two together, they're both favourable. I just done a cheat here. Obviously can't do that in the exam, and that gives us our direct labour cost. However, we could obviously just to double check, we've actually got the figures. If we took the standard cost minus the actual, we've got the same answer, and that's task 3 done. No fixed overhead cost in this. I must admit, I don't see the real point of fixed overhead variances. You know if your rent's gone up, you know if you've used more electricity or gas or something, and this, so just normal variance and monitoring is usually fine for fixed overheads in the real world. Possible that you'll get the cost or some description or a tick box question on it, but not many. But make sure you've got the labour and materials fixed. Right, on to our next task, except we're going back to the other paper. Task 4. So, box, more tables, more numbers to be filled in, more data to be read carefully. So delimited a new product, and they're doing target costing, so it's decision making techniques. We're going to work out the target cost for labour, so and then either you can make them quick enough or you can't, and then you take the decision. So this is the information to take the decision. So products sold is £80, there's 80 marks here. Slight variations in the way this one can be calculated. Nothing massively different, it's just I'll show us a couple of variations, but that one we don't need to worry about. We've actually given that one the selling price per unit. Don't know why they couldn't put that one in for you, but oh well. Anyway, the profit margin is the £80, and it's telling you profit margin's got to be 35%. So it's got to be £28. So the total costs got to be no more than £52. So the fixed cost per unit, it's 240,000 a year for 15,000 units. So £16 per unit. Obviously that's a very descriptive, I mean there's a written bit coming up, might want to remember that one. 240,000 is a very ballpark figure, 15,000 is a very ballpark figure. The material though is likely to be a bit more accurate, and it is 1.25 kilos at £25 each, £31.25. So if they were going to get their 35% margin, it will be C20 minus £4.75 maximum labour cost, and we need to turn that into minutes. Causes all sorts of problems turning this into minutes. I'm just having to think about it as well. So £4.75, more than one way of dealing with this and calculating it. I'm going to do 4.75 out of the £16, so it's the fraction, times 60, and that's 18 minutes. Now if you want to look at it precisely, if it was only calculated 17.8, just under 18 minutes they've got to do it in, and they either can or they can't. If they're way off, find something else to do. If you're close, see what you can do, which is what the next question's about. So this one, seen some really good answers. It is good in that it tells you to explain with calculations. So like all AMAC questions or management accounting written questions, you can often answer them in a line or two. So if the wage is like to £18, they either can or they can't. Quite simple. And they take the decision. Well, that's not going to get you 10 marks. So the labour rate is going to go up to £18. What would it do? We need some numbers in to explain this. So by the time this is submitted, hopefully it's joined up a little bit more than I will here. Some answers for written tasks are bullet points are quite acceptable, a little bit more than they used to be. But let's get on with it. So first of all, no harm, nice little introduction. It looked a much more interesting word than. If I won't get my I've got all the letters in right fingers in the wrong order. Right letters, wrong order. There, that's better. Labour cost wise, the product may no longer be viable. So now do the calculations. So the calculations. What did we do before? Well, okay, we did £4.75. 4.75 over 18 times 60. And that one is, well, I might as well actually put it in because we're on the spreadsheet. Now, pretty much the same, just under 16 minutes, so it was 17.81, so 2 minutes quicker. Two minutes less, state the obvious sometimes. And then turn it into full text. So we sorted that out. We've got to, because we've done the calculations and actually shown and explained that it's 2 minutes less. We've got most of the 10 marks there. The revised target labour time may not be achievable. So, if this is not achievable, a business to make decisions. 1. Do not make. 2. It can save the labour cost. 3. Another saving. Why not? Loads of things you can do. 4. The fixed overhead general figure. Is this right? Yeah, if not, just spotted a typo, save. Right, so June and another one. So there's a figure. Right, if not, the actual quote is a contribution so it it is to could. So it's still a good product. Increasing could be another option, but could reduce sales. We pretty much got everything in there. You could spend hours trying to work this one out. You can come back to these questions, making sure you've got the 10 marks. So the labour cost, we've done the calculations, the important calculations, so it's 2 minutes less. If it's not achievable, business has to make the decision. One, do not make. They just say, oh, we can't do it, don't make it, do something else. Add that one in. Look, say the labour cost, cheaper labour or or training, or okay, why not put it in? This sort of thing you can always train staff, or all sorts of things you could do to try and save the labour cost, cheaper labour, and get somebody else to do it. Another saving. Some kind of material saving, and obviously the fixed overhead is a genuine figure. Is it right? It may be that if that sort of it's £16 per unit. If that was £14 per unit, then suddenly they're fine. They're okay on £18 an hour. Because again, if you've got the time, you could put that one in. You could even explain that obviously save us so much per unit, because it does, such a ballpark figure. If not, it is not a profit figure, so it could still be a product. They just don't. It's still making a big contribution. It's still making a lot of money per item. It's still making them 20. It's not going to be £28, and you could actually work it out. It won't be the contribution won't be £28 per unit, but it's not going to be that much less for 2 minutes labour, for the extra labour cost. So again, there's loads of room to add to make sure you've got the 10 marks in this. So I'll just put those notes in. Hang on, let's get this one in. Hang on. Calculate the fixed costs saving. In other words, what would happen, and then also obviously how much does the extra cost reduce the profit by? So loads of room for development in this question. So in other words, just do the sums. It's now taking 16 minutes. So actually okay, why not work it out? Okay, equals 16 over 60 times 18. Have we got that right? No, we haven't got the labour cost per unit. Hang on, what have we done? 16 over. Okay, there's £4.80. So that's actually 5p per unit. They are, so not essential, but why not? Show some good skills, show some good understanding. Are we worried about 5p per unit on an item that sells for £80? Well, fine margins sometimes matter. Right, task 5 then. So, more number skills, more understanding of what's going on. Also, lots of opportunities for putting some numbers in that are pure mathematics. So, skill building, even if you're not fully conversant with the whole aspect of the question. So you don't need to give it in, you can work these ones out. So for instance, I have done some additional numbers to the right, so ready to explain. So if you're looking at the screen and thinking what's on the right, it's coming up later. So the contribution per unit is the selling price minus the variable costs. That's our first contribution, and I made a typo there, so what did I do wrong? I've done the normal trick of hitting the multiplication symbol, because I can't have any lights on whilst recording, it messes it up. £11.20. So having done the one, because I did a formula, I can just do that, make save a bit of time. So Elmi has got the biggest contribution per unit. Okay, well it wouldn't be a good question if when we did the contribution per labour hours, because they shortened labour hours, it wasn't the other way round, and lots of other options. So the labour hours per unit, again we've got to calculate it because it's £9 an hour. That's going to be 0.5, I'm going to worry about that one, and that one's £2/3, £7.50 over 9. Okay, equals hang on, 7.50 equals 6. Getting them over. That's better. And then this one, £9, that's 1. An hour each. So we get marks, building up marks, little marks here, and just for, well, just realising that if it costs £9 an hour and it's £9, it's an hour each. So that one, it wouldn't be a good question if it didn't work like this, is an hour. So the contribution per labour hour, again that's just straightforward numbers, we've got the calculation. If you'd made a mistake, you would get carried forward errors. You wouldn't get penalised for the same error twice, unlike Osborne's answer is actually wrong on this one. I'm not sure how they got the answer. I did play around and try and work it out. Couldn't. So now what we've got to do is rank them. There were some old-fashioned questions where you'd rank it, so we're now going to rank them. Oki would be number 1, it's the best. Then it's Ashi, then it's Elmi. So Oki will get its full quota of 20,000 hours. We know it's 20,000 hours because it's there. Except I need to put that one in here. And it's the production units. No, hang on, that's 20,000 hours. Get that right, get it the right way round. Right, so production units 20,000 off here. Half an hour each, that's 10,000 hours. We should be okay for Elmi because if we put the whole quantity in, and times it by that decimal, that's 16,000 hours, so we should be okay. That's 26,000, so our least profitable item, 6,000 hours, takes us up to our 32,000 hours. I've left that in there just to prove. So what we've got to do is work out how many we can make. What's an hour each? So it's the easiest one to calculate, isn't it? 6,000 hours. So there we are. There's our table done. Now we've got to work out the profit achieved. Lots of little calculations on this. So I've already done this to save time. So the profit, so the contribution here, so for Oki is 224,000. It is just the hours times the contribution per labour hours, or we could actually have done the production units times the contribution per unit. We would have got to exactly the same number. Then ASHI, bigger contribution, and ELMI, because it's not being made so much, it's a smaller. So that's just the total contribution. Now the fixed cost we had to work out because it's all we've got in the information is the fixed production overheads per unit, £5 per unit. £5 per unit, 20,000 units is 100,000. That's where that 100,000 came from. Now the fact is, although we're making less of ELMI, it doesn't reduce because fixed costs can't be cut in the short term. So it's still 150,000. So that gives us a profit of 294,880, which is the answer here. So 294,880. More than one way of calculating in that you could work out the contribution, or you could do the variable cost. You could do it far more complicated ways, but the answer would always be 294,880. And now we're getting on to a written one again. So I've left this one in from a previous practice deliberately, just because I knew it would be complicated trying to do it again. So first of all, explain that the contribution per unit masks the limiting factor. If you're short of something, you have to make it go as far as possible. Been there, it's easy for me, been there, done that. We're running out of something, we want to make as much with it as possible, whether it's glue, resins that have leaked out and all sorts of things, or just time, trying to get as much done in the time that you've got possible. It's a perfectly normal thing to do. And also I'll put in here, Osborne didn't do no answer to the fact that fixed costs cannot be saved in the short term. But in the long term, of course, if you want to make sure you're getting the marks, all costs are variable. You would reduce the factory size, warehouse, or whatever in the long term. So in this case, were the company to reduce output of Oki, then less profit would be made. So time permitting, you've got to earn 8 marks, your decision, under the exam. Can you do the calculations quick? Would you want to do them whilst you're still on task 5, or would you be better waiting, doing a couple more tasks, and if you've got an extra 20 minutes, these calculations are going to cement all the marks. Okay, now also remember there's other parts to questions. This is only 2 parts really. If there's 3, that's when students forget often the third part of a question. However, it says give an example of a constraint where using a ranking based on contribute provide the most profitable plan. Okay, so something along the lines of contribution per unit would only be the most suitable if the labour hours were the same per unit. You shorten labour hours, you want the contribution per item, because the contribution per labour hours are going to be the same. Alternatively, where the limiting factor is transport, you can only transport so many units. Storage, you can only store so many units. Or sales units, you can only sell whatever it is, not the 59,000, you can only sell 50,000 regardless. You're going to sell mostly ELMI in that case. So there's something along those lines. And if you want the numbers, let's have a look how I work that one out. So I could actually explain. In fact, on the numbers, if we did contribution per unit, we would make all of ELMI. So that would be the full 15,000 hours, because they're only going to sell 15,000 of them. That would leave us 17,000 hours for ASHI, which isn't actually the full quota of hours for ASHI. So ASHI would also be cut back. We would only be making ELMI and most of ASHI. We'd be making 25,500 instead of, actually no, 24,000 is the demand, isn't it actually? So I know I have got this wrong actually. We can make some ASHI. 16,000 hours, okay. 16,000, so actually we've got 1,000 hours, which means we could actually make 2,000 production units. So actually we could then redraft my numbers. I'll just check these ones. I haven't got it right, obviously. Now, I had done the calculations up here. So Elmby, that's okay. Oki would now be 2,000 times the contribution per unit. And this one will now be 24. In fact, that's the same number. Either way, it still doesn't change the actual answer. Hang on, 200. No, that was right. Instead of making 294,480, we're making 284,080. So there we are. You can make mistakes. Everybody can make a mistake. I just spotted that right at the end. Actually, it's the got us 1,000 hours because demand was 24,000. I put 25,000 in. Oh well, that's done. That shows you a bit of how the numbers was worked. So whether it's worth that kind of calculations in an 8-mark question, it's arguable, but the guidance says anything relevant. If you put that in, you are going to be able to get the 8 marks.